Some people do believe that NFP figures can actually be predicted by ADP figures. So let's look into the real figures and get the proper comparison. Now, first of all, NFP, non-farm payrolls, like you all know, it is the change in the number of people employed in the previous month, excluding the farming industry. Now, you see, job creation accounts for the majority of economic activity since it indicates consumer expenditure. Because as you know, if you have a job, then you have money to spend. If you are unemployed, then there's not much money to spend, which means more jobs are always better for the economy. And if the jobs come out less than expected, that is not good for the USD. But you see, 2 days before NFP is released, we have something called the ADP non-farm employment change. Now this one is the measure of non-farm private employment. By the way, mark the word private. The report is compiled by automatic data processing as an ADP. Now, the survey covers over 400,000 US business clients based on payroll data. So literally, it's talking about employment change in the private sector, but excluding the farming industry also. You know, like weeding, farming, growing crops. I don't know. You guys know what farmers do, we all know what they do. I don't really care that much. You see, the first difference between NFP and ADP figures is that the ADP looks at private employment, and its scope of research is only around 400,000 companies, or let me say 400,000 clients. But NFP is for the whole country, and these are government figures. So NFP figures are released by the government. But keep in mind that ADP figures are released 2 days before NFP. So now the question is, can we use ADP figures to predict the outcome of NFP figures? Let's make a quick comparison of these figures in the last 4 months. Now, in December of 2023, the ADP non-farm employment change figures were released on the 6th of December with a forecast of 130,000 jobs, and the actual figure was 101 jobs. 2 days later, the NFP was released with a forecast of 180,000 jobs, and the actual figures were 173,000 jobs. You see, now the actual figures came out fewer in the ADP, you know, and then the NFP also did the same. The figures were actually fewer than the forecasts. So in this sense, anyone who used ADP figures to predict NFP outcomes was, let me say, they had a blast, because they both came out below the forecasts. Then when we get to January of 2024, this year, the ADP non-farm employment change figures had a forecast of 115,000 jobs. You understand? The actual figure was 158,000 jobs. So the actual figure was higher than the forecast. Then we look at the NFP. The NFP figures they had a forecast of 170,000 jobs, and the actual figure was a whopping 333,000 jobs. You understand? So way more than the forecast. Still, if you use the ADP to predict the outcome of the NFP, let us say you had this one correct. Let me use the word correct, because they both came out higher than their forecasts. Then in January of 2024, one of my best NFPs, by the way, of all time, but that's not the point today. Anyway, the ADP non-farm employment figures had a forecast of 145,000, 45,000 jobs. And the actual figures came out as 107,000. And that means that the actual figure was below the forecast. You understand? So then we get to NFP 2 days later. The figure was, the forecast was 187,000, and the actuals came out as 353,000. So there was, I don't know if we can call that a miscommunication, or if we can call that a wrong prediction. Because for those that used this to predict, this time it wasn't very on point. As most of the things in Forex, nothing is perfect. And in this case, yes, the indicator did not indicate very well. You understand? It did not really indicate. Then the recent one of March 2024, the forecast of the ADP non-farm employment figures, they were 149,000, and the actual figure was 140,000. So it was lower than the forecast. Then we come to the NFP 2 days later, of course, as usual. The NFP was 198,000 and the actual figure was 275,000. So the actual figure was more than the forecast when it comes to the NFP. Understand? And the ADP was the ADP was a little bit less than the actual figure. So still, based off of the last 4 months alone, you have 2 correct forecasts and 2 wrong ones. So let's assume it's 50-50 as an indicator for NFP, at least based on the last 4 months. But you see, we have to look at it from a wider range. Let's make it like a year, like briefly. Did you know that between April of 2023 and March of 2024, that's 12 months, the ADP non-farm employment figures, as compared to their forecasts, predicted NFP as also compared to its forecast, 7 times out of the 12. That is like a 58% win rate if you put it into percentages. So for now, as a trader, you can count on that. I don't know, it can be part of your analysis, or you can use the information any way you want. But for those of you that believed that ADP figures can actually predict NFP figures, you have a comparison to begin with.